girl in a white dress was being courted out among the cars. As her voice swarmed and puddled into laughs, I felt like some old pike, all badged with sores, wanting to swim and touched with soft-mouthed life. Wow. That is fantastic. One, two. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Andy That's in the Bonnevilles podcast. Hope you're well. So I missed the podcast during the week. I'll be honest with you, got a wee bit pissed off. Didn't really want to do it. There's too much news. Everything happens too quickly, and the cruelty of a lot of what's coming out at the minute is beyond belief. It's just staggering, and I got a wee bit overwhelmed, and I got a wee bit pissed off, and that's just the way it is. So I decided to have a couple of Guinness, as is my wont, and a wee joint, just to chill out and relax a bit, which I needed to do. So there we go. But I'm all back to normal now, I think, whatever normal was in the first place. So updates, what's been going on? Obviously with me personally, my big thing is my album. I'm still waiting on a release date. I'm pretty much good to go. Everything's been held up because of the COVID thing. But I've been assured that I'm going to put this out there, but I've been told the 12th to the 15th of December. Again, I can't put the pre-order, the links up for sales and stuff until I confirm the date, until it's confirmed for me. So I have to just sort of suggest that that's when it's going to be, which would be great because I wanted to get it out before Christmas. Looks like that might be happening. And yeah, there we go. So it's all good there. We updated. I told you last week that one of the reasons I was so pissed off was because my daughter picked up the COVID, and so she was in isolation up in Belfast with her boyfriend. But she's over that now, thank God. No harm done. Doesn't seem to be any long-term damage either. No people talking about the long COVID. So she seems to be fine, as does her boyfriend Chris, a lovely young man. So that's good. And yeah, so that's good. So that's my personal shit. I'll sort of tidy it up. So couple of quick little updates. I'm not going to talk about this much, but I'm going to mention it because I'm going to talk about VAR, which is not. I know I talk about politics almost exclusively, but I'm going to just sort of tack away from that for this one, just for a moment. I'm not going to talk about this for long. Just going to mention it because I don't know much about it. I'm not a huge. I've always been a Liverpool football fan all my life from I was a wee child. Sort of fell out of love with football, and then recently, this past 3 or 4 years, I've fallen back in love with it again. More specifically, I've fallen back in love with Liverpool again because of Jurgen Klopp, a man who I admire a lot. So there was the VAR thing. I'm talking about my friend Richie McGee. So my friend Richie McGee has a podcast called Keepy Uppies, and it's about the international football thing. Just turn that down. It's about international football, but he talks about local football here in Lurgan as well. But the man is an absolute encyclopedia, and I kind of take my lead from him. I'm happy to do that with most things. I mean, if I get to talk to someone that knows more than me about any subject, I'll happily sit and listen. And Richie's definitely one of those for when it comes to soccer. And he was talking about the VAR, and he hates it. and I've come to hate it as well. I was sort of agnostic on it, but I've definitely come to hate it as well because of what happened at the weekend. Liverpool played Everton, and the Everton goalkeeper horror tackled our godlike centre half Virgil van Dijk. And as you know, if you follow football in any way, shape, or form, Virgil is now out for the rest of the season with a ACL ligament injury. It's going to require surgery and rehabilitation, and it's a real pain in the ass for us as a club. But because he was our talisman from he's been at Liverpool, he hasn't missed a single game, and so we're going to miss him greatly. He's probably the best centre half in the world, and you don't replace that. You just don't go and pick one of those up when you need one. You know what I mean? So, but the VAR thing, video assisted referee, this is the whole point. So this VAR thing brought in, where someone sitting in a room 200 miles away can buzz the referee on the pitch and tell him we're looking at the TV replays because we think there's something happened that you missed. And the tackle that Pickford, the Everton goalkeeper, did on Virgil was brutal, and it never went to VAR. And it leads to the question: what is the point of it? If it misses that, what is the point of it? It's just so. That's where I am at the minute with it. I'm going, well, what is the point of this? It doesn't make any sense. You may as well not have the referee there. The referee may as well go home. You may as well, just use the guy in the little room 200 miles away. But anyway, so there's that. Then I want to go to. This isn't the first thing I want to talk about. It is one. It is the first thing I want to talk about, but I'm going to want to talk about just briefly because it's not over yet. And if you look back on my podcast, you'll know that I spoke about this a while back and about the situation that happened in Bolivia. So, Evo Morales was the president of Bolivia. Bolivia being rich in lithium, all that. We spoke about this in one of the podcasts about Elon Musk and his supporting the coup in Bolivia in order to steal their lithium for the batteries for his electric cars. Not exclusively for him, of course, but so Evo Morales was the 3 times elected. I won't say 3 times elected president of Bolivia, socialist, and he changed the constitution, I believe, to go for a 4th term, which he won, and then he was eventually overthrown in a coup. Now, the problem that with what now, I'm not going to comment on whether Morales was right or wrong, but I will say this: I'll sort of try and balance it up a little bit. Evo Morales, in the Constitution of Bolivia, I believe you're only allowed to run like 2 or 3 times. Like in the US, you're only allowed to run twice and all that sort of stuff. So Evo Morales wanted to stay on and run more, and he won the popular vote. The people wanted him as well. So he did that, even though he was advised against it. I think personally what he should have done was sat in the background, ran his party, another socialist could have ran for president and carried on the reforms that the socialists were putting in place. But he didn't. He chose his own path, and it came back to bite him and the people of Bolivia in the arse. So they were overthrown and these people were horrible, right-wing. These were Christian fundamentalists. They were psychopaths. And then they said we're an interim government. We're going to run the country until we can have an election, and that's what we'll do. Well, they've been putting the election off because they were going to lose the election, but they eventually had to run it. And who did the people vote for? Mas, the same party, Evo Morales' party. So put him back in power. He's in exile. They exiled him. He's in Argentina. First of all, Mexico, then he went to Argentina. He's probably going to come back now. I don't know what to do. To run the party or be president, I don't know. So here's a little video about that.
Exit polls are showing that Evo Morales' movement towards Socialism Party has secured more than 50% of the vote in an election held Sunday, shattering American propaganda pushed by Pompeo and the national security establishment, the CIA, and also the mainstream media that backed the right-wing party and police forces throwing Morales out of power and claiming that the election was illegitimate with zero evidence. So Morales is currently in Argentina. His party won an election soundly when he was in a different country. So can we call it a coup now? Can we call it a coup now? Because these were some of the headlines written by the esteemed New York Times and very similar in other papers back last year. This will be forever. How the ambitions of Evo Morales contributed to his fall. Bolivia prospered on the watch of its firebrand leftist president, but his refusal to step aside led to an ignominious downfall, blaming the guy who won the election for not stepping aside. Cool. Election fraud aided Evo Morales, international panel concludes, the New York Times wrote. That international panel, yes, it was the OAS, and it was discovered that it was their audit that was flawed back in June, not the election itself.
The OAS is the Organization of American States. So the Organization of American States is, and I'm going to say it's CIA funded organization that in South America and Central America, this group has no credibility. But here in the West, it's presented to us as though it's of the people. So when the OAS says that people in South America are unhappy, what they're saying is people in North America, namely Langley and Washington, are unhappy. They're not representative of the people in South America. So we'll push on.
Which was clear to anybody that was paying attention and not just gobbling up CIA propaganda. But the media, they can't help themselves. So this is an Associated Press headline on the results from yesterday. Bolivians waited nervously for the results of Sunday's high-stakes presidential election, even as Evo Morales preempted authorities' slow vote count and declared his hand-picked candidate the victor. Maybe want to mention who won the election? Or the fact that the party in power was the one that was responsible for slowing the election. I mean, they delayed this election twice, the right-wing party in power. But no. The media is so uncritical of the national security establishment. It blows my mind. I mean, they will crack down on whatever Trump says. I get it. He's insane. He's stupid. He is a menace to this country. And they'll be as critical of anything he says. But when it comes to the national security establishment, which, by the way, has lied to us over and over again, when it comes to the fact that they were spying on us illegally, when it comes to the Iraq War. I mean, do I need to give more examples? The media will just reprint exactly what they think. And part of this was because Bolivia, under Morales, they were doing economic deals over lithium with China and not the United States. So the US was so angry that its economic interests weren't entirely met by the socialist president Evo Morales, and so they were responsible for pushing forward this propaganda campaign about a coup when that wasn't the reality. This is really what happened with the election last night. Exit polls.
So, there you go. Does that clear that up for you? May as well tell you about it because you're not going to hear about it on the news. All you're going to hear is about Evo Morales being a horrible socialist and how he's doing a bad job. The fact of the matter is that his reforms have benefited the majority of the people. And whenever you say socialist reforms, yes, it does mean taking money away out of the path that leads directly to the pockets of the wealthy or the already wealthy. That's what it means. There's no point in going to the poor people, looking money off them. You have to take it off the rich. That's the way it works. But under socialism, the rich are still going to be rich. That's the point. They're just not going to have all the money. We're going to have school meals. We're going to talk about that next. we're going to have free education. It's not free education. It's education that's paid for. We're going to use the money that the country generates, that the taxes that we have, to pay for these things. That's all it is. You're not going to have a billionaire. We're going to tax those bastards out of existence, those greedy fucking psychopaths. Can you imagine going to bed at night knowing you've got 100 billion whatever's in the bank, and you wake up in the next day and your first thought is, how am I going to turn that into 100 and more billion? And not, I'm going to solve homelessness, or I'm going to look after the poor, or do what? I mean, that's not your first thought. You've all that. You don't need any more money. Why are you pursuing this? It's insane. Fuck these psychos. Get out. Off with them. So, I meant to play you this little video last week. It's from Carl Sagan. I think I mentioned it, but I just forgot to play it. I ran out of time, as I always do. So, Ted Turner, this is from the early 70s, I think, by the look of it. Ted Turner asked Carl Sagan if he's a socialist. Carl Sagan was a renowned, I think he was an astrophysicist or something like that, but he was on the TV a lot.
Well, are you a socialist?
I'm not sure what a socialist is,
Well,
but I believe
that
the government has a responsibility to care for the people. I'm not talking about dole. I'm talking about making people self-reliant, people able to take care of themselves. There are countries which are perfectly able to do that. The United States is an extremely rich country. It's perfectly able to do that. It chooses not to. It chooses to have homeless people. We are 19th in the world in infant mortality. 18 other countries save the lives of their babies better than we.
By the way, since then, that figure's gone out. It's actually much worse than that now.
How come? They just spend more money on it. They care about their babies more than we care about ours. I think it's a disgrace. And this country has vast wealth. You just look at what something like Star Wars. The money spent on Star Wars, already spent $20 billion on it. If these guys are permitted to go ahead, they will spend $1 trillion on
Sorry, this must have been the 80s, not the 70s.
Star Wars. Think of what that money could be used for, to educate, to help, to bring people up to a sense of self-confidence, to improve not just the happiness of people in America, but their economic standing, to improve the competitiveness of the United States compared to other countries. We are using money for the wrong stuff.
Boom. End of fucking argument. It's as simple as that. End of argument. We are using money for the wrong stuff. Now, if you reflexively withdraw when you hear the word socialist, that's because you've been propagandized against it. If you live in the West, if you're under 70 years of age, you don't know what socialism means, really. In fact, I'd say none of us do, because very few of us have experienced it. But we've all been propagandized. Sorry, I'm holding a guitar. Put that back. We've all been propagandized against socialism. We confuse it with communism. We confuse it with totalitarianism, with Soviet Stalinism, with Chinese totalitarianism. This is what we've been told in the West, what socialism inevitably leads to, whereas on the same hand, capitalism leads to, as that idiot Bridgen from last week says, capitalism will lead you to a land of milk and honey. For some, but not for the most, not for the majority, and that's the difference. That's the difference. I don't know any socialists that resent their success. It's not what we do. We want you to be successful. We want you to be as successful as you can be. But if that means that if your success is built on the exploitation of others, then we're going to stop you. We don't want you to do that. We don't want that to be the way it is. And a billionaire's wealth is exclusively built on the exploitation of others. Jeff Bezos is worth $200 billion. We're told that it's because he works harder. Does he work 200 billion times harder? How does that work? That's impossible. I always say Jeff Bezos because he's like a cartoon villain. This guy, he's a comic book character, but it's too easy to have a go at him. But this is the point. This is the point. You need to understand that we've all been propagandized against socialism. We need to start using the word and educating ourselves. Read a book. Read The Ragged Trousered Philanthropists. You don't have to read Karl Marx, but read a bit of them. Read the abridged versions or the the cliff notes and things like that. Go on to YouTube. If you take your information in visually, like I do, a lot of the way, I respond well to listening to podcasts and watching video. Go on and listen to people like Chris Hedges talk, people like Professor Wolf, and many, many others. Go and have a little search, a little hunt about. And don't be listening to people. At the minute on YouTube, we've got these YouTube celebrities, people like, what do you call them? A squeaky person. Oh, sorry, name escapes me. But they're these right-wing American conservatives, and they talk very fast and they're very squeaky. And I can't listen to them because everything they say is such transparent horseshit. Everything is about cancel culture, cultural Marxism, which doesn't fucking exist. And instead of focusing on policies and economics, they scare their audience into agreeing with them. And I've seen it here. I've seen people that I know say things from them, and where did you hear that? And they would tell me. I go, this is such nonsense. I wish I could think of a better example for you right now. I can't even remember the guys' names who I'm talking about, but they're really fucking famous. But go and educate yourself about these things, about what is socialism, because it's not what you've been told. If you're a socialist or you're of the left, and that's fine. But if you're hedging your bets, this is what we're saying. Are you against your state, your government, providing healthcare for its citizens? Are you against the state providing education for its citizens? Now, just organising. It's already paid for. It's paid for in the taxes. We're just choosing what to spend our taxes on. That's what we're talking about here. Providing basic services, roads, lights, bin collections, all these things. If you're not for all them, then you're a libertarian. That's fine. That's a different point of view. That's a different argument. Childish nonsense, but it's an argument. But if you're calling yourself a conservative and you're for all those, you need to educate yourself a wee bit. Or if you're against refugees, say you're against refugees, without asking the question, why are the refugees coming here in the first place? Because we bombed them. They don't want to come here. I can prove it. How can you prove it, Andy? Because until we bombed them, they never came. The refugees at the minute are all coming from where? Yemen, Libya. Why? What have we done over there? We're supporting the war, siege warfare. There's Saudi Arabia with its United Arab Emirates partners are committing, technically it's a war crime, a battle tactic from the Middle Ages, siege warfare, causing starvation in the Yemen. So we're getting loads of them. What's that got to do with us? We're providing the weapons to Saudi Arabia to do their bombing raids. Libya was whether you don't have to agree with Colonel Gaddafi to go, well, it was better off before we overthrew Gaddafi, because now it's sitting there with three governments. It's got open slave markets, literally open slave markets, and it's got three governments that are fighting among each other for dominance of the country. Whereas before, it was the country in Africa with the highest standard of living. That's a fact. Is Colonel Gaddafi a bad guy? Doesn't fucking matter. None of your fucking business. None of mine. So if you're against refugees and you don't make the leap to why we've got refugees, France has loads of refugees, loads of Muslim immigration. France spent the best part of the fucking 1900s, the 19th century, invading North Africa, stealing their wealth. And then they complain why all these immigrants end up. Not that I'm backing. By the way, that's not me apologising for the horror shows that went on there last week. But you know what I mean? The link is there, and if you have to make the link. And these are the things that capitalism and neoliberalism will give us, all these. But we're not allowed to think beyond the slogan, beyond the headline, the wave of immigration, the wave of free education. He's free for you. It's not free. We pay for it. And speaking of paying for shit, Marcus Rashford. This is the reasons, but football-y, this one. For those of you in the UK and Ireland or whatever, sorry, let me just plug the heater out there. It's getting a bit warm in here. During the week, well, actually, it's been going on this year. Marcus Rashford is a football player with Manchester United Football Club. You know, a young fella, 22 years of age, grew up in poverty, and has developed a social conscience, which is fucking brilliant, and I hope he inspires a generation of young men. Although, as I've said before in my podcast, I do believe the young people they're going to kick our asses. They're going to fucking shame us. I think they've got a better grasp of things purely because of what they've been denied. Their parents' generation, people like me, have denied them, made their lives harder. They'll never own their own homes. They'll leave university in debt, etc., etc. Never had that. But my generation has denied my kids that. So Marcus Rashford, whenever we went into the first lockdown in the United Kingdom, Marcus Rashford started a campaign to force the government to provide free meals. So children going to school, schools were shut down. They weren't allowed to go to school. So he started a campaign to make sure that the government carried on giving them those free meals while they were in lockdown. And it was fantastic. It was a great help. Now we're in the second lockdown, partial lockdown, and the government have said no, we're not going to provide those same free meals. Marcus Rashford started a big campaign, and people have stepped up in a massive and impressive way, but it's put the government to shame. The government have said that they can't afford it. Meanwhile, they're spunking away 12 billion to Serco to build a test and trace system, which they've completely fucking failed at. Why no one's being prosecuted, I have no idea. But you know, the gears of the British state are beyond my kin, and I can't begin to figure out how you get away with that. If I went down to a local shop and stole a fucking Mars bar, I'd find myself in front of a judge. Apparently, my crime. It's the problem is not that I committed the crime. The problem is that the crime wasn't big enough. If I wanted to get away with it, that's how I would do it. So don't steal Mars bars, people. Steal billions. No one's going to chase you for that. So here's a little thing from Channel 4 News. So, little video.
Morning, Prime Minister.
It was supposed to be a photo opportunity to launch this year's Poppy Appeal.
Why let kids go hungry, Prime Minister? Will you extend free school meals?
For those of you listening to the podcast, the video, go over to the YouTubes, like, share, subscribe. There's members from the armed forces standing on the doorstep of number 10 Downing Street, and that big fucking palooka Johnson comes out for a photo op with these troops.
He didn't say it, but the answer is no. However, political pressure is mounting, and it's coming from the unofficial opposition. Footballer Marcus Rashford, usually seen playing for Manchester United, here he is at a Manchester food bank with his mum. The 22-year-old has faced criticism during his campaign to keep free school meals going through the holidays. He told BBC Breakfast he doesn't let it bother him.
For me, it's, I'll take that all day long, as long as we start to see improvements going forward for the people that are in need of it now, is what's important to me. So I don't mind the criticism.
He says it's not about politics, but in speaking out, he's sparked a political movement that is sweeping the country. And social media, with many businesses saying they will provide free school meals for children that need them during half term. Marcus Rashford is coordinating the response on his Twitter feed. One of those businesses is Warren's Fruit and Veg in Watford.
We both feel very, very strongly that no kid in this area should go hungry during half term because the parents can't afford to feed them properly.
It shouldn't be like that, and we're ready to help out. So if it costs us a week's wages, we're quite happy to do it.
Should it be the government that's doing it though?
Well, we think so.
Our opinion is quite a strong one.
Of course it should be. Of course it should be. That's the fucking point. That's the whole point of this. Every MP that voted against this gets free meals, subsidised food in the House of Commons, subsidised bar. I'd go and be an MP just for that.
And that's they should have done more to feed these kids during the half-term break, and that's why we're doing something about it.
At the height of lockdown, when schools were shut, the government provided food vouchers for children that would usually get free school meals. But when the lockdown ended, so did the vouchers. In summer, though, when Marcus Rashford first spoke out, they relented and launched the COVID-19 Summer Food Fund. This time round, they're not budging.
The best way we can support children is through helping as many of their parents retain their jobs as possible, which is why we have the comprehensive package of support through the furlough scheme, the self-employed income support scheme, and now the replacement with the job support scheme and the business grants, the tax deferrals, the loans that we've set out.
This has led many councils to say they'll continue to provide the service regardless.
Right now, we have families that are on the edge, and this is a really practical thing that the government should be doing to help children, but we're going to do in the absence of them doing the right thing.
Some Conservative MPs are saying that Labour are being opportunistic and using this just to make a political point.
This is about children having food. It's not a political point. It's a basic thing, and that's something that I would hope in our country, in Britain, wouldn't be up for question. No child should be going hungry.
Many Conservative MPs faced criticism this week for voting against a Labour motion on the issue in the Commons.
So the noes have it, the noes have it.
And it won't be the last time it's discussed there, with a petition calling for the permanent provision of free school meals during holidays getting well over 500,000 signatures, meaning it will be debated again in Parliament. But back at Warren's Fruit and Veg, it's not politics they're concerned about, it's the people who need their help and making sure that they get it.
However you want to do it, just take the gear, make sure your kids are fed. That's our main priority, and don't feel any shame at all.
And walk away with a smile on your face.
That's it.
These two dudes have more fucking humanity than the entire House of Commons. Now, the way that vote went down was all the Tories voted against it, or for it, or against it, to provide the whatever way you want to put it. All of Labour obviously voted against it or for it, depending on what way you want to put it. And our own DUP MPs here in Northern Ireland, they all abstained. It means they didn't turn up for the vote, except for one, Jim Shannon. He voted against it. I mean, again, I don't even know what the fucking amount, what the bill was, but he voted to provide the children with the free meals. But here's one, Carla Lockhart. This is the MP for here, for where I'm from, Upper Bann. Breaking, free school meal payments will be made to all qualifying families during the half-term break this week, next week and the week after. Welcome news from the Northern Ireland Executive. No child should ever go without food. Carla Condell Lockhart. Condell, what is that? But She's talking about for Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland's children are being fed. Scotland's children are being fed, and the Welsh children are being fed, but the English children aren't. Now, the English did vote for the Tories, so it's the Tories that's done this to you. You know, I hope this kind of, teaches people a lot. I hope it makes people realise what they did. When the Red Wall fell, this crucifixion of sacrificing of Jeremy Corbyn, bringing genuine socialist policies to the working class, and yet now you've destroyed from within his own party and destroyed from without in the establishment. It's just disgusting. Lovely picture here up on the screen. It's Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. You'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. And then the next image is them one's overlooking the Houses of Parliament. It's true. It's true. By the way, I'm sitting here with a wee guitar behind me. So every now and again, you might hear me picking away at it. That's what it is. Just whenever a wee video goes on, I might feel the need to play a wee bit. Just to have a wee noodle. I might want to play a song. We'll sing a song. Maybe I will. So we're going to do a little bit of a wee bit more politics, and then see if I can find. Here we go. So this is a great article. This is an article from the London Economic, and again, everything's to do with Brexit at the minute. Brexit is tied into everything. So we've got the big thing for the world is the COVID thing. For us here, we've got Brexit as well to be coping with. So here's a headline from the London Economic. Brexit will not be done until Johnson's 19th century British Empire Tribute Act cabinet is replaced. When I saw that headline, I laughed my arse off. That was just from the other day. That made me laugh so much. It was so fucking funny and so apt. So Gavin Esler, I think he's the newsreader from like a Channel 4 newsreader or something. So here we go. I'll read a little bit of this, and if you want to go and check this out, it's on the londoneconomic.com. Free article. So, the decision of the Prime Minister to tell the British people to prepare for a no-deal Brexit is about as surprising as news that Pope Francis embraces the Catholic faith. Similarly, Boris Johnson blaming the EU for failure of his vacuous Brexit strategy is like learning bears defecate in the woodland. So to continue the theme of non-surprises, here's what Boris Johnson actually said as he blamed the European Union for his own failure to secure a deal. Given that they have refused to negotiate seriously for the past few months, I've concluded we should get ready for January the 1st with arrangements that are more like Australia's, based on simple principles of global free trade. Australia is in fact trying to negotiate a comprehensive free trade agreement with the EU, but unlike, say, Somalia and soon Britain, Australia does not have an FTA at present. Curiously, Mr. Johnson didn't say Britain should prepare for a Somalia-style deal for reasons that I will leave to your imagination. Capital R, capital Acist. Failed. United Kingdom has had 4.5 years of Conservative governments who could have negotiated a deal. They failed, although Mr. Johnson, as usual, has set himself a series of phony deadlines. A deal of some sort could still emerge, but what is astonishing is the naivete of those involved. And this gets onto that Westminster bubble thing that Naomi O'Leary was talking about. Remember, we were talking about it in the last couple of podcasts. They're living in a bubble of their own. They don't get it. I remember I showed you that Andrew Bridgen video from last week where he says, Ireland, they'll look north of the border and they'll see this land. They're living in a fucking fantasy land. So here is the man Johnson chose to be the UK's chief negotiator, David Frost, now Lord Frost. Disappointed, he tweeted, because the European Union leaders have in essence stuck by something that Angela Merkel said 4 years ago, that the UK cannot have a trade deal with benefits of the membership of the single market without actually being in the single market. right? So I'll read that again. The UK's chief negotiator, David Frost, he tweeted, disappointed because the European Union leaders have in essence stuck by something that Angela Merkel said 4 years ago. He didn't tweet this is reading into what he said. That the UK cannot have a deal with the benefits of the membership of the single market without actually being in the single market. Do you understand? Now, when you think about what that means, think back to the start of this. Way back to the start. Remember whenever your Bridgens and your Michael Goves and your Boris Johnsons and everybody else was telling anyone that would listen to them that the German car market, because they sell more cars into us and all that, the German car market would make sure that Britain doesn't get fucking, it gets what it wants from this trade deal. Can you remember that? And I remember discussing it. I remember very clearly discussing this with anybody that when I was talking about it at the time, saying, but that doesn't make any sense because there are 27 other members of the EU who all have to abide by certain rules to avail of the benefits of being within the club. That's what it is, the big club. And what the UK is saying, we're going to leave the club but take all the benefits with us. And the club is saying, no. That's not how a club works. It's very basic stuff, this. I know it's very... I'm putting it in a very basic way, but simply, that is quite simply what it is. And I remember this with that car market thing. No, BMW and the Mercedes and Audi sell more cars into... No, it's fucking bullshit. The Germans will want to sell their cars. Absolutely, of course they do. But then the EU isn't going to sacrifice the solidarity, for want of, it's not, solidarity is not a good word, but the it's not going to sacrifice the sense of being in the EU, the well-being that you get from being in it. You can't turn around and look at the UK, who stuck two fingers up the EU, walked away saying, fuck you, and we've got all the good shit, you're all a bunch of fucking dicks. And by the way, that's not hyperbole from me. This is what these guys are doing. They're just sticking two fingers up to everyone. They're falling out with everyone. There's no charm here. There's no charm offensive. There's no diplomacy. There's no playing the long game. There's no strategy. It's just fuck off. Telling everybody to give us what we want or fuck off. Everyone's we want to fuck off because we're not giving you what you want. What you want is actually impossible as well. Even if the French, the Germans, the Italians, or anyone else wanted to give the UK these things, they couldn't do it because there's rules. It's not NAM, right? So, Lord Frost then says he's surprised the EU is no longer working intensively to reach a future partnership, and also surprised by suggestion that all future moves must come from the UK. Though I spent years working with competent diplomats from all over the world. This is the author speaking. They are never surprised by something after 4.5 years of talking about it. Even the most naive member of Boris Johnson's government surely must have noticed that 67 million people in the UK will not be able to persuade some 450 million in the EU that we hold all the cards. Okay, there we go. Boom, boom, boom. Two things, therefore, are notable from Boris Johnson's outburst. The first is that it plays well with Brexit hardliners, the ones who want to give lorry drivers special passports for Kent. Builders are currently creating a massive lorry park in a great county. And that great county, in all fairness, should be formally named the Nigel Farage Memorial Lorry Park as his gift to the nation. Farage's Garages. This is what I'm hearing they're being called. I hope this catches on, but that's a good one. Second, Johnson's words could be just bluff and bluster, and that's the key problem. No one believes Boris Johnson in anything. So, botched, to borrow a phrase from It's Always Sunny. Because Boris Johnson doesn't actually believe in anything except his own genius, he has a style rather than an ideology. That's important. That's an important sentence. He may mean that he wants a no-deal Brexit, or it could be a bluff, and he will do what he did with Northern Ireland: surrender his supposed red lines and declare it all a world-beating success. And he'd have a fucking team of cheerleaders telling them that he's right, and he'd have it all repeated in the press. We should remember that this is the Prime Minister who won the December 19 election with advertisements saying, "Ding, our Brexit deal is ready." He was elected on a lie. Yeah. So this is the end of the article. Perhaps Johnson himself doesn't really know, but Brexit is certainly not done. Deal or no deal, it will not be done for years until the United Kingdom finds a competent government in tune with the real world, rather than Mr. Johnson's cabinet from the 19th century from a 19th century British Empire Tribute Act. And since Mr. Johnson and his chief negotiator seem to be constantly surprised by events, here's what's coming. The Johnson legacy will be a botched Brexit, the botched handling of coronavirus, and a massive economic slowdown. Plus, as I argue in my forthcoming book, How Britain Ends, as leader of the Conservative and Unionist, in inverted commas, party, Boris Johnson is destroying what we used to call the United Kingdom. Boom. Abso-fucking-lutely. Couldn't agree more. The writing's been on the wall for a long time. We've seen this coming. So, think about it so Boris Johnson was elected last December. Kent is it's going to be a car park, a lorry park. Do you know about the passport thing? If you're a lorry driver and you're going to Kent to go to Dover to cross the channel to Europe, you have to have a passport to get into Kent with your lorry. So that means that you're pre-cleared. Everyone's pre-cleared, right? So that's more bureaucracy and more cost. They built massive lorry parks in Kent just to try and avoid the queues that are inevitably going to happen. So Kent now hate him. Manchester now hate him. The north of England, because of the what am I thinking here? The food, the school meals thing. Shit, my fucking memory. The school meals thing. The north of England, the Manchester mayor Andy Burnham. We saw that thing on. I should have had a thing about that up. He asked for 60 million because Manchester's gone into a lockdown, and they asked for 60 million to furlough workers, and they were offered. Eventually, they ended up with 20 million. Which is not even a fraction. Now that difference is going to have to come from the council, the city's budget, which has already been decimated. You know, the Tories have been in power for 10 years and they've been cutting council budgets all over the place. There's no money there. So those workers that are going to be furloughed, that money's going to have to come from somewhere within the budget, which has been cut and cut for 10 years constantly. So he's lost the north of England, the so-called Red Wall. Who believed him? I don't know why. Again, always confuses me when we vote for these idiots. When you vote for these idiots, it always bewilders me. I genuinely am confused by it. I don't get it. Northern Ireland. We'll stay with Northern Ireland. We'll leave that to the end. Scotland. The SNP, by all accounts, from all polls, Scotland's ready to leave the Union. As Gavin Asler said in that last article, he's presided over the breaking up of the Union. There's no doubt about it. Like if all the feedback that if Scotland had a chance to vote for independence tomorrow, it looks like they would take it. The rise of Welsh nationalism, Plaid Cymru, the desire for independence from the United Kingdom, from England, is rising in Wales quite severely, quite hard. And then here, Northern Ireland. The ever reliable Northern Ireland. And we need a fucking border poll in this country like you wouldn't believe. And I'm going to finish. This is my last little read. And then pish, where is it? Sorry, I'll just pull this up. I've lost something. My pocket list. So it's an article from Peter Robinson. So Peter Robinson is the ex-leader of the DUP. I know. So, but he was the last leader that the DUP had. And when you say a leader, you mean someone with a strategic brain that can think ahead of time, that doesn't just react, but plans. And he was Ian Paisley's number 2 for decades. Then when Ian Paisley died, he became number 1. And he was a very good leader of unionism. Not a good leader. I don't think, obviously I'm not a unionist, but when you compare him to the fucking clown show, the clown car that DUP have at the minute, it's hands down, this guy is a fucking political genius compared to these idiots. So, Peter Robinson, I'll read this article out to you. It's from the Belfast Telegraph, and it was a free article. I think all the Belfast Telegraph articles are free. Peter Robinson hits out at border poll deniers, urging unionists to prepare for a referendum. Now, this is what I've been saying. And it's obvious, unionism needs to stop taking its lead from idiots like Jamie Bryson and Edwin fucking Poots. God, I meant to talk about him and I'm going to run out of time. But this is more important. So, former First Minister Peter Robinson has said unionists must prepare for the predictable showdown of a border poll on Irish unity. Writing in the newsletter, Mr Robinson acknowledged the current issues facing politicians, including coronavirus and Brexit, but warned a looming border poll could not be ignored. The former DUP leader said border poll deniers who think the vote will never take place are engaged in a complacent and dangerous thinking, and this is me, I'm off script, they're misleading their own constituents and their own community. When you go onto Twitter and you see the arguments, I know Twitter isn't the real world, but you see the arguments being put forward by a lot of the loyalists. And there are a few unionists out there that have got their fucking heads out of their asses, but most of them just go, no, Ulster will be British forever, end of story, fuck off, and that's the end of the argument. You're like, Jesus Christ, would you fucking open your eyes and take a look around you? Why does it matter to me? It doesn't matter to me in the sense that I think that if we keep going the way that we're going, down the route of Brexit and this 19th century British Empire tribute act of a government, we have a border. We don't have to have another British election for another 4 years. 4 years of this shit. We're going to be biting our own fingers off to get to unite this island. I think all we have to do is to provide an All Ireland NHS, and you'll have it in the morning. That's what I think. We're nearly there in the north. The south will take 70% plus of the south will take the north. Depending on what poll you read, it's somewhere around a 50-50 in the north. You give an All-Ireland NHS, EU cash will come flooding in, as Naomi O'Leary says in a certain article that I read out a few weeks ago. It's a done fucking deal. But the loyalists and the unionists have to fucking have the conversation. But this, at the moment, they're not. And this is a problem. A problem for them, not for me. And I don't want it to be a problem for me going forward. I don't want it to be a problem in the future. So they need to engage now. And they need to present their argument. What are the two arguments? We're better off in a United Ireland, or we're better off in the United Kingdom. What's your argument for United Ireland? And that goes from, I have to make that argument. Well, I think we could do this, and I do that when I can. Well, you have to give me the same argument if you disagree with me. What's the benefit of being in the United Kingdom? Well, we have an NHS, which is being dismantled, is my comeback. I say, well, I want a United Ireland NHS, and you say, well, you haven't got it. True, but that's what we want. So if we can get that teed up, that's the future. It's future-proofed. Do you understand? This is what we need to do. But at the minute, it's all one side. It's just people like me talking about a United Ireland and trying to... but I'm talking to nobody. Because unionists and loyalists don't engage. Can you dig? Right. So on Thursday, the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, set out his vision for a shared island after his government set up a dedicated unit in his department. However, Mr Martin said a border poll was not on his government's agenda for at least 5 years. That's if they're in 5 years. Sinn Féin has repeatedly called for a border poll throughout the Brexit process. The party's impressive performance in last year's general election also led to an increased discussion on Irish unity. Mr Robinson said previous efforts from unionist parties to work together to protect the union had never lasted long, and it never worked particularly well. So, listen, I'm not going to read all of that out. I'm going to let you go and find that yourself. It's the Belfast Telegraph from a day or two ago. Peter Robinson hits out a border poll deniers. It's actually an original article in the newsletter. So, I'll just say here, Mr. Robinson said everyone in Northern Ireland would have a heavy price to pay if unionists do not focus on preparations for a border poll, and that's my point. We will all have a heavy price to pay. Now, this is a sort of an underlying, it's just a head up about the potential for loyalist violence, I guess. There's not going to be the same. A lot of loyalist violence they were protected by the state. A lot of it was done in cahoots with the state. There won't be any of that, because in United Ireland the British government will have no say. There'll be no British state here to carry loyalists to their violence. That's what I think. So, where are we? What have we got? What time have we got? Okay, we're 55 minutes. Okay. So, here we go. I'm going to talk just two quick things, real quick. Sean Kelly. Do we know who Sean Kelly is? Of course we do. Sean Kelly is the greatest Irish professional cyclist that's ever lived. And I found this article in the Irish Times, and it's called it's from a series in the Times called An Irishman's Diary, and it's fantastic. So, I'm a cycling fan. I'm a cyclist as well. I don't race so much anymore, but at the minute, the Vuelta a España on the Giro d'Italia. So you know about the Tour de France, right? Please forgive me if I'm preaching to the choir, but a lot of people don't know anything about cycling beyond the Tour de France. So you got the Tour de France, and it's called a Grand Tour, and there's 3 Grand Tours. There's the Tour of France, the Giro d'Italia, so it's the Tour of Italy, and then the Vuelta a España, Tour of Spain, France, Italy, Spain, and normally the Giro, the Italian one, happens first. It happens in May, and then you have July for the Tour of France, and then you have Vuelta a España. It normally happens in sort of August. But because of the COVID thing, it's all been fucked up. The Tour de France happened, and now at the same time the Vuelta a España, and although the Giro d'Italia finishes tomorrow, and the Vuelta a España just started the other day. We're in the stage 5. Now, there's 2 Irishmen racing in the Vuelta a España this year. One's Sam Bennett, and one is Dan Martin. Dan Martin is a wee skinny climber guy, and he won the stage yesterday, so he's sitting second in GC, general classification. Second overall, which is amazing news. I don't think he's going to be able to maintain that, because he's not a great time trialist, and you need to be a good time trialist to win a tour. But, nonetheless, he came to the Vuelta looking stages, and that's certainly what he's got. And so that was stage 4. And then stage 3 the day before, Sam Bennett, the sprinter who races for a Belgian team, he won the stage, and he won stage 3, the sprinters, the flat stage. So it's 2 Irish wins in 2 days. This is fantastic. This is such good news. I was so happy about that. So this came up on my Google feed, because we all know that Google spies on us, so it throws me up these cycling articles every now and again, and this was brilliant. I loved this. So I'll read it out. So, Kelly's heroines, Frank McNally on a Spanish trade union with an oddly Irish name. Right? So this is a diary that's published in the Irish Times. We were discussing recently how the 19th century the name Bridget became a word in American English meaning housemaid, because of the huge numbers of real-life Bridgets from Ireland who did that job. But I have since been fascinated to learn by the modern Spanish equivalent of such workers also go by an Irish name. There you go. Didn't know this. You're about to find out. Albeit accidentally, they call themselves Las Kellys. Now, and now even have a union of that title. They too tend to be immigrants, although not from Ireland. So where did the name arise? Well, as one language website explains, neologismo colloquial is drawn from 3-word Spanish phrase that describes who they are and what they do. Los que limpian, which means those who clean, right? Listen to this, this is class. Except that the pronoun is female in Spanish, which is apt because so are the workers. So to the local ears, que and the li equal Kelly, right? So las que limpian. So it's las, L-A-S, one word, que, Q-U-E, one word, and then L-I-M-P-I-A-N. Limpian. So las que limpian. So they just made it Las Kellys, right? So, and the Hibernian flavour doesn't end there. Like all the best organised movements these days, the union representing them in hotels and offices has a theme colour. Naturally, it's Kelly green. This is class. A particularly garish member of the 40 Shades, more likely to be seen in the US than here. Although it was coined with the quintessential Irish surname in mind. The Kelly green t-shirts have become visible in parts of Spain as the yellow vests are in France. If you watch any international news headlines and you see that there's a lot of unrest going on, as you know, across France with the yellow vests and across other countries. In Spain it's green. And it's these guys, and I've been seeing these green t-shirts all over the place, and I had no idea, but this is what it is. So it was this that drew the attention of Frank McGahan, to whom I am indeed indebted. Last Wednesday evening, not for the first time, he saw their weekly protest on Via Latina in Barcelona, but this time he investigated further, and as someone with an interest in the history of the Bridgets, was bowled over by what he heard. There is, as he says, a very serious side to this. The contracting out of cleaning services everywhere has already made a hard job much worse, to the detriment of wages, hours, sick leave and health. But in banding together as Las Kellys, the Spanish cleaners have already gone a step farther than the Bridgets ever did, as Frank learned. They have even taken their cause to Brussels. There was a time in the 1980s when the name Kelly and the word green was synonymous for another reason. The Kelly was a cyclist Sean Kelly, and the green was the jersey of the points classification leader of the Tour de France, a competition he dominated for years. No Irish cyclist has won it ever since, until the 2020's delayed instalment when his protege and fellow Carrick-on-Suir man Sam Bennett did it in style. So, bring us up to date. Sean Kelly won the Tour de France yellow jersey when he was in his pomp. He dominated that competition. He also won the Vuelta a España. He won it overall in his own right. The only Irishman ever to do so. So that's where the Las Kellys comes from. It comes from Kelly, Sean Kelly, because he was the most famous Irishman in the world at the time, I guess. So there we go. And Sam Bennett, by the way, who won the stage 4, is also from the same village that Kelly is from in Kerry, Carrick-on-Suir. And that's just brilliant. I love that. How's that? Is that interesting? Is that a good thing? So, I'm going to finish up a wee quick. Nearly done. A few seconds to go. What are we up to? An hour? Nice, okay. So last week, I recommended this book, didn't I? Seamusheaney, Fieldwork. So I'm going to read a short poem from it. Hopefully you'll dig it. It's called... So Seamusheaney wrote this book in the early 70s. He was a professor in Queen's University, and he moved to Wicklow in like 1972, I think. And this was the first book that he wrote, first collection he wrote when he was in that period of his life. And it's beautiful. It's a lovely book. You should get it. So this is a poem called The Guttural Muse. So here we go. Late summer and at midnight, I smelt the heat of the day. At my window over the hotel car park, I breathed the muddied night airs off the lake, and I watched a young crowd leave the discotheque. Their voices rose up thick and comforting as oily bubbles the feeding tench sent up. That evening at dusk, the slimy tench, once called the doctor fish because his slime was said to heal the wounds of fish that touched it. A girl in a white dress was being courted out among the cars. As her voice swarmed and puddled into laughs, I felt like some old pike, all badged with sores, wanting to swim and touched with soft-mouthed life. Wow. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. He compares himself to an old pike, all badged with sores. He compared the voices of the young rising up like the oily bubbles that the feeding tench sent up, the doctor fish. And these voices are healing them. I felt like some old pike all badged with sores wanting to swim and touch with soft-mouthed life. It's a celebration of the young. That is stunning. Seamusheaney, Fieldwork. That's a beautiful book, beautiful poem. That's called The Guttural Muse. So there we go. We're all done. And I like, as I said to you, I think the young people are not to quote that song, but the young people are the future. We have to have hope in them. We have to give them the space to breathe and the space to make mistakes, but the space to do right. Because I think they're going to do right by us in a way that we've failed them. I do genuinely believe that. So let's call this a thing. Again, at 50 different things that I wanted are overreached as usual, and I never got to half the shit that I wanted to talk about, but sure. I have a great article from Eamon McCann in Hot Press that I'll just flash it up there on screen. What is it? Eamon McCann. Al Capone was a gentleman compared to Ian Paisley. I'll get it the next time. Oh, aye. So the next one I'm going to do, I know I keep threatening to do more of these, but the next one I'm going to do it, I think, on the American election at the minute, because it's looming. It's 2 weeks, and it affects us all, as you know. So I think I'm probably going to do a wee sort of election special, just on my thoughts on that. So there we go. I'm going to call it. Hope you're well, everybody. Stay safe, and love you all. Bye now.